made you change direction?
30 years ago, I had a family, 3 sons, and I was living in LA at the time and wanted to leave Los Angeles to raise my children and decided to go to Ohio. And while there, I became fascinated with quilts because it was a time when cooperatives, quilt cooperatives in this country had begun, and one of the most prominent was a quilt cooperative in Kentucky. And I happened to be at the trade market in Dallas, Texas, and saw some quilts from a cooperative in Kentucky. And I don't know how many quilt makers are in here, but you know, when you go to a quilt show, there are always signs, do not touch the quilts. And quilt makers are the worst offenders. The worst offenders. But it was, I went to the showroom and there were 4 traditional quilts on the wall. And there was just something that drew me to those quilts, and I had to touch them. I had to look at the back of them. And my quilt career began then because I left there with the determination to teach myself how to quilt. I wanted to learn how to quilt. I went back to Los Angeles, and I never had time for any classes, okay? So I just went and got a quilt book and taught myself, reading this how-to book. And my first quilt was a very traditional 4-patch quilt. And 9-patch, I'm sorry. It had 9 little squares sewn together. And I read the directions, and I wanted the quilt to be a traditional quilt with cotton batting, and I made the top. But I couldn't find any cotton batting. I could only find synthetic polybat at the time. So what I did, I had to have that cotton batting. So people, because I wanted it to be an authentic American quilt with the cotton batting. So I went to the drugstore and I got first aid cotton. People that are my age know, we used to have this cotton. It was called Red. It was Red Cross. It was in a little box, and you got a little square cotton, and I got boxes and boxes of this cotton, and I unfurled it and put it over my backing. But those of you that are familiar with that product, you just get a little bitty square. So I had to go back to our local drugstore many times to get more because it just never seemed to be enough. And one day the pharmacist came out from behind his little kiosk and he says, Dr. Mazloomi, very cautiously, he says, I don't know who's sick in your home, but I think you better get them to the hospital. Because I had just bought up so much of this cotton. And then I put my little quilt sandwich together and quilted it. And I didn't follow all the directions and pre-washed the cotton, okay? So I had little kids and the quilt got dirty. I put it in the washer and dried it. And the middle of the quilt stands up, and because it shrunk, I didn't pre-wash it. So it really looks like a soft sculpture. It looks like an egg. So that was my first experiment with quilting.
And what year was this?
Oh, gee, that was in 79 or 80. And now I pay my kids not to show us how to do that. But over the years, through trial and error, I like to think that I've become better. Even though I still haven't had any technical courses, but just through trial and error, it has come to what it is now.
Well, it's great that you did it because you obviously have a great deal of talent, natural talent. I mean, to be able to be able to quilt like that, it is so fantastic. I mean, it is amazing that you did it. because we would have been at a great loss if you had not.